Bruchim Haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Tzadik Tes Amud Aleph at the new Mishnah. Our Mishnah discusses being Moitzi Mirishus HaYochid Rishus HaRabim in other different types of situations. Chulias Habor V'Hasela. If a person has a bore, a pit, the chulias refers to the outer edge, the rim of the bore that has, when you dig up a bore, some of the sand, some of the dirt that surrounds that bore. V'hasela, and a boulder. Shehen gvoin asora, v'rachvan arba. They have the dimensions of Rishus HaYochid, which are 4 tfachim wide and 10 tfachim high. Either in the boulder, of course, it's the height of the boulder on top of the surface, or in regards to the pit, it's talking about the bottom, the depths of the pit has asara tfachim. Hanoito mehen v'hanoisin al gabon chayev. If a person would take, let's say, from the boulder, which is a Rishus HaYochid, and put it in the Rishus HaRabim, or vice versa, he would take with something on the Rishus HaYochid and he would put it onto the boulder, which is Rishus HaRabim, and put it on the boulder, which is Rishus HaYochid, he would be chayev. Pachas became potter, but less than this, he would be potter. Says the Gemara, Lama li lemisni chulias habor v'asela. Ask the Gemara the following question. Granted, when it comes to the boulder, we understand that there is a height of asar tfachim and there is a surface of arba tfachim to make a Rishus HaYochid. But when it comes to the bore, why mention chulias habor? If we're talking about there's a height of the chulias habor, that means surrounding the bore itself 10 tfachim. That's already the case of the boulder. And if we're talking about the depth of the bore itself, why mention chulias habor? Just mention the bore. Lisni habor v'hasela. Answers the Gemara, Messiah leile Rabbi Yochanan. This is support for Rabbi Yochanan. The Rabbi Yochanan, he said the following: Bor v'chuliosa mitztarfin la'asar. The chulias habor together with the bore can make asara. That means to say, let's say you have a bore of 9 tfachim deep. The chulias habor, the surrounding dirt that is in the rim of the bore, which is 1 tefach, combines to make asar tefachim. Tanya nami hoch, we also have a brisa like this. Bor b'Rishus HaRabim amuka asara. If you have a bore in the Rishus HaRabim that has a depth of asar tefachim, v'rachva arba, and it has the width of 4 tefachim, which is now the dimensions of Rishus HaYochid. You cannot fill up a kli from this bore of water and then do that on Shabbos, because you'll be taking from the Rishus HaYochid to the Rishus HaRabim. So that'll be an issue of hotzol. Unless you had made a mechitza of asar tfachim, which is between the Rishus HaRabim and the bore, then you could go ahead and dole out a cup of water from the bore. Ve'ein shoisin heimena b'Shabbos, and you cannot drink from this bore on Shabbos, even if you're going to then drink over the bore, where it won't be an issue of hotzah, but the Chacham were concerned, because if you did that, you may then bring it to the Rishus HaRabim, the rest of your body, and thereby be it moitzi from the Rishus HaYochid to the Rishus HaRabim. Elim kein hichnis lo roish haruba, unless you put your head and the majority of your body over the bore, then there's not a concern that you'll be nimshach after your body into the Rishus HaRabim. Ubor v'chuliasa mitztarfin la'asara. Now the end of the brisa is that we said before in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that the bor and the chuliasa together make asara tfachim. And that's what we said before. That's why the Mishnah teaches this chiddush of bor v'chuliasa. The Gemara asked the following: Boy mine Rab Mordechai meirava Amud b'Rishus HaRabim gavor asar v'rachav dalet. If you have an Amud in the Rishus HaRabim that has the dimensions of Rishus HaYochid, it has 10 tfachim high and 4 tfachim wide. V'zorak v'noch al gabav, and a person threw from the Rishus HaRabim an object, and it went over the Rishus HaYochid, over this Amud, and it landed on the Amud itself. What's the din over here? In other words, after he threw it, so then it goes down, the trajectory goes down and lands into the Amud. What's the din? Mi amrin, do we say Hare Akira be'Isr, Hare Hanocha be'Isr? The Akira from the Rishus HaRabim was be'Isr, and the Hanocha and the Rishus HaYachid on the Amud is be'Isr, and therefore he would be Chayiv. Oidilma kivan de mimakam petur ka'asya lo, or maybe because right before it went onto the Amud, the trajectory was such that it went over Asara Tfachim, which is now beyond the Rishus HaRabim, and then only afterwards into Rishus HaYachid, and therefore he'd be potter. Omalei Masnisanhi. He answers that this is a Mishnah. Also, Shaila Rav Yosef Amalei Masnisahi. He asked Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef said also it's a Mishnah. Also, Shaila La Abaye Amalei Masnisanhi. He asked Abaye, and Abaye also responds, it's a Mishnah. Omar Lohu, he said to them, Kulchu beroika dahadadi tafisu. You're all spitting the same spit. Amrile, they say to him, Va'at lo tizbara, but you don't think so. V'hatan, our Mishnah states, Hanoitel mehen v'noisen al gabon chayav. If you take from them, meaning from, let's say, the boulder where the object was, and you put it in the Rishus HaRabim, you would be chayav. Similarly, if you would take from the Rishus HaRabim and you throw it, you put it onto the boulder, it would be chayiv. So that's the same thing over here. Omarle dilma masnisa b'machat. Maybe the Mishnah where you're talking about where you put onto the boulder is talking about a machat. Machat nami iefshe deloi midli purta, but even a machat, as small as it is not possible that it's not going to then go up and be lifted a little bit, and therefore go over asar tfachim, meaning in a makam petur, and then go into the boulder. The Islay Marsha answers the Gemara that there's a marsha, there is a protrusion, and therefore, since there's a protrusion on this amud, or on this rock rather, in the Mishnah, therefore it goes on the protrusion, and since the protrusion is batel to the rock, therefore it's considered to be part of the Rishus HaYachid. But really, it's a little bit less. It goes a little bit less than asar tfachim, and therefore it's not the same question. Inami, alternative, deramya becharitza, or it goes up into the charitza. There's a little charitza, a little part, a crevice in the boulder, whereby it gets thrown into the crevice and then hits and goes on top of the rock, whereby it never enters above asar tfachim, a makam petur. Says the Gemara, Vayter Amar Rav Misha Boy Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan asked the following question: Koisil b'Rishus HaRabim gavoya asara ve'eno rachav arba. If you have a wall in the Rishus HaRabim that has the height of 10 tfachim, but does not have the width of 4 tfachim, so it doesn't have the dimensions of a Rishus HaYachid. Umukaf lekarmelis v'asor Rishus HaYachid, but it surrounds a karmelis for residential purposes, and therefore makes a Rishus HaYachid. V'zorak v'noch al gabov. And then you throw an object on top of this wall. Ma, what's the din? Mi amrin, do we say, Kivan de eino rochav dalid mokoim peturhu? Do we say, since indeed it doesn't have the width of dalid tfachim, it's a mokom petur, and therefore he's potter? Or dilma kivan de asoy rishus hayochi keman demali damya. Or maybe since it makes a rishus hayochi for the karmelis, therefore we consider it to be a rishus hayochid as well. Part of this wall is a rishus hayochid. Omar ula kal v'chomer. Ula says a kal v'chomer. If la'acherim oisem mechitza, if to others it makes a mechitza, that means for the karmelis, it's considered to be now a rishus hayochid for the karmelis. La'atzmoy l'kol shekain, for itself, the wall itself is not going to kol shekain be a rishus hayochid, and therefore he would be chayav. Itmar nam, we also have a statement. Omar Rab Chia bar Ashi, Omar Rav, v'chein Omar Rab Yitzchok, Omar Rab Yochanan. The following: Koisel b'rishus harabim gavoya asara ve'eino rochav arba. If you have a wall in the rishus harabim which has the height of 10 tfachim, but that has a width that's less than dalet tfachim, whereby the wall itself is not the dimensions of Rishus HaYochid. Umukaf lekarmelis v'asar Rishus HaYochid, and yet it surrounds a karmelis, making that karmelis into Rishus HaYochid. Hazarek v'nach al gabov chayev. If a person were to throw an object from Rishus HaRabim onto this wall, he would be chayev. Why? Because la'acherim oisem mechitza la'atzmo l'kol shekain. If for acher, meaning it's mukaf, the karmelis making a Rishus HaYochid, then certainly for itself it should be considered to be a Rishus HaYochid, whereby he would be chayev for throwing it from Rishus HaRabim onto this koisa, onto this wall. Asking more vayte boy Rabbi Yochanan on the following question: Bor tisha v'chakar mimena chulya v'ishlima la'asora mahu. If you have a bore of 9 tfachim deep, and then you take the bottom of the bore and tefach from the bottom of the bore of mud or of dirt, the mimashlim now the bore to be a depth of asara tfachim. Now it has the dimensions of a Rishus HaYochid because it's 4 tfachim wide and 10 tfachim deep. What's the din? Akiras chayfetz ve'asiyas mechitza bahadi adodi ka'asu u'mechayiv. By taking the dirt from the bottom of this bore and then taking it out, at the same time making it a Rishus HaYochid, he'll therefore be chayiv from taking it out from the Rishus HaYochid to the Rishus HaRabim. Oidloim mechayiv. Or we say no, he's not going to be chayiv. Excuse me. If you will want to say Kevan the loy have a mechitza asara mikara lo mechayiv, that because it didn't have a mechitza, it wasn't considered a Rishus HaYochid initially when you made the akira, therefore he's not going to be chayiv. Bor asara v'nosen lesoicha chulya umiyato mahu. If you then have a bor of asara tfachim and you take out and you put in a tefach of dirt, now minimizing its shear, it's no longer going to be a Rishus HaYochid. What's the din? Hanochas chayfetz v'siluk mechitza bahadi hadodi ka'asu mechayiv. Because now, nonetheless, when you took out the dimensions of the Rishus HaYochid by adding a tefach of dirt into the bor, nonetheless, it was at the same time that you put the dirt inside, whereby it's chayiv. Oy loy mechayiv, or not. Now over here, this imtim tzeloymar is based on saying that the akira, which we said before, is not considered to be an akira. In other words, before we said that when you have a situation where you have 9 tfachim bor and you add you have 9 tfachim bor, and you add a tefach by being oiker, a tefach of sand or of mud. There we said it's not going to be considered to be a chiyuv. On the tzad that's not a chiyuv, then we ask now, what happens if you have a bor that is 10 tfachim, and you now reduce the bor? You now reduce the bor by taking a tefach of dirt and you put it inside the bor, making a hanacha. So the Gemara is saying at this point that the akira, although we said before, is not enough to make on the suggestion that it's not enough to make a chiyuv, maybe the hanacha is. We saw such a svar that we explained in the beginning of the parak, which was really found in Daf Daled Amud Beis. That is that we said sometimes we find a akira as being more difficult, more chamur than the hanacha. Because we said that a person who does, let's say, throwing an object from Rishus HaYochid through the Rishus HaRabim into another Rishus HaYochid, according to Rabbi Akiva, that we say is going to be chayiv because kluta kamisha huncha damya. So we asked, why is that only chayiv 1 chatos? It should be chayiv 2 chatos, one for the Rishus HaRabim to the Rishus HaYochid, and a second one making an akira from Rishus HaYochid to the Rishus HaRabim. The answer we said, based on the Gemara and Daf Daled, is that it's easier to make a hanacha into the Rishus HaYochid, and therefore we can say kluta kamisha huncha. But to make the akira in a place where it's not Daled tfachim, we wouldn't say. So too over here, the Gemara is going on such an assumption. And that's why the Gemara is asking its question now by Akira, by Hanocha. Disnan Hazorek, back in the Gemara, Tipshoit le mididei. The Gemara says, let us be poishet this question on itself, meaning to say that Rabbi Yochanan himself can answer this question. He asks, if you go ahead and then make a hanacha by taking the bor that is 10 tefachim and minimizing the shear by putting a tefach of dirt on the bottom, is that going to be chayiv? Now the Gemara says, let us be poishet that shayla from Rabbi Yochanan himself. Disnan, it says in the Mishnah, Hazorek arba amois bekoisel lemala me'asar tefachim kezorek ba'avir. If a person throws an object 4 amos in the Rishus HaRabim and it hits a wall that's 4 amos later, and it's above the wall where it hits it, above asar tefachim, it's as if he threw it in the avir above asar tefachim. It's not going to be chayiv, it's going to be potter, because higher than asar tefachim is not the Rishus HaRabim. So he did not then transfer, he didn't do a havara of daled amos of the Rishus HaRabim. Lemata me'asara kezorek ba'aretz. However, if he threw that object and it hit the wall, which is now less than asar tefachim, he hits the wall, then he's going to be chayiv. It's as if he threw it on he threw it on the ground. The azarek ba'aretz arba amos is chayiv, and therefore he would be chayiv. Ve'havinan ba, and let us analyze. Let's look into this Mishnah. Ve'holo nach, behold, it didn't nach on the wall. It bounced off the wall, came back into the Rishus HaRabim, which is less than arba tefachim. So he never did a havara of Dalet Amos in the Rishus HaRabim. So why should be chayiv? Rabbi Yochanan came and explained, B'devei shmeina, we're talking about where he threw a soft fig whereby it stuck to the wall. And therefore, if it's stuck to the wall, then it's part of the wall. So says the Gemara, if it's part of the wall, therefore Rabbi Yochanan says it's part of the wall when he threw this devela. Va'amai, asked the Gemara, if so, then he never threw a daled amos, because now he's throwing it on an object on the wall, thereby it hasn't been daled amos, because it's now part of the wall. Answers the Gemara, no. Hasam loy mevatel lei. Over there, when it comes to the dried fig that is soft, when it hits the wall, we're saying that indeed it's not part of the wall, and therefore it has been a havar of daled amos, because he doesn't want to then mevatel the dried fig. He wants to keep the dried fig, so it's not part of the wall. Whereas over here, when it comes to then taking the tefach of dirt and putting it into the bor, then he leaves the tefach of dirt. He doesn't want it. He's mevatel it. It becomes part of the bor. Therefore, he has his question. Maybe over here there is a hanach and we should be chayav. Boy, Rava asked now another question. Zorak daf v'nach al gabe yisedos ma'o. If a person throws a daf, a board, which itself is not the dimensions of a Rishus HaYachid, and he throws it on a yisedos that have the dimensions of a Rishus HaYachid, which are asar tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide. Because this daf itself is now being thrown onto the Yesedos. So now, does this daf that he's throwing onto the Yesedos, is this going to be chayiv or not? What's the din? It becomes now a Rishus HaYachid onto the Yesedos when he throws it. So the Gemara asks, Mai, ki mi boy le hanochas chayfetz v'asiyas mechitza b'hadad yadadi kasi? Are you coming to ask whether it becomes now a Rishus HaYachid the moment it lands on the Yesedos, on the pegs? After all, that's the same question that you asked before. Hainu de Rabbi Yochanan. That's Rav, what you're asking is what Rabbi Yochanan asked before. If it comes simultaneously becoming a Rishus HaYachid. Ki boy leila Rava. The Gemara says no. What Rava was asking was slightly different. The Zara kigon the Zara daf the chayfetz al gabov. Now, if he took now a daf and he put a chayfetz on the daf, now when he throws the daf and it goes onto the Yesedos, do we see that he's chayiv or not? As follows: Kivan de bahadi adadi ka'osu b'kahanochas chayfetz v'asiyas mechitza dami. Do we say it's just like the hanacha of the daf is like the object on top of it, and therefore it comes on top of it at the same time. In other words, since the object was already on the daf, when it comes onto the Yeseidos, it's as if now it's landing and it becomes the Rishus HaYachid at the same time, and therefore would be potter. Since it's not possible that a little bit would not be lifted up, that means the object from the daf, then hadar nayich, and therefore it lands a drop onto the daf, and therefore it's like there already was the daf on the pegs, on the Yeseidos, and only subsequently does the chayfetz fall and land on the Rishus HaYachid, whereby he would be chayav. Answers the Gemara, teku, an unanswered question, it leaves it as a question.